Today, we compare the novel Goldfinger by Ian Fleming and the spectacular movie Goldfinger, produced by Eon Productions, and see how close they are and what other influences the novel has had on the franchise. Hi, this is Dan.
And Tom.
And we're cracking the code of this gem right now. All right, so for my recent birthday, Tom, a friend gave me a set of 10 Ian Fleming James Bond books, paperback books.
Oh, that's a nice gift.
Yeah, and they were published in the 1950s and so on. I mean, early 1960s and early 1960s. And the pages are all yellowed and fragile, and they were all individually wrapped in plastic. And I thought, okay, I'm going to open this up. So I picked up the Goldfinger novel, and I started reading it again. And I thought, this time in the paperback edition, and the pages are kind of crumbling a little and everything. It's like, I got to be careful. So Goldfinger, again, was a seventh novel in Ian Fleming's James Bond series. It was written in January and February 1958, and it was first published in the UK on March 23rd, 1959. So when you're reading the book, Fleming is just such a great descriptive writer.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, when Goldfinger stood up when James Bond saw him, and Bond said this about him, everything was out of proportion. Just that little phrase alone just shows you how powerful the writing is. About Goldfinger, everything was out of proportion. His description of Goldfinger, for example, is just outstanding. 5 foot tall, he says, and, quote, on top of the thick body and blunt peasant legs was set almost directly into the shoulders, a huge, and it seemed exactly round head. What a great image.
And that's also a little bit different description than the Goldfinger we see in the movie. Yeah,
well, he goes on to describe some things that were a little bit familiar to us. I mean, he goes on to describe his forehead, carroty hair, eyelashes, cheekbones, and everything. You really get a great image of Goldfinger in your head, and that's how good Fleming was in writing and describing things. And so we get a little different view in the movie with Gert Fröbe, but just in this book, it's just, I mean, you read this, it's just like, okay, this is why you were so successful. Great stuff.
Well, and the way that Bond described Goldfinger in the novel here, it does give us a difference between the novel and the movie, in part because it's a written word instead of visual.
Yeah.
But the movie focuses more on action and style, while the book tends to focus a little bit more on Bond's inner thoughts. So his thoughts of looking at Goldfinger and thinking everything was out of proportion.
Yeah.
Right? You get that in the novel, and you don't get that when you watch the movie.
I mean, when you look at the movie and you see Goldfinger, you can see some of what he's writing in the book there. I mean, Goldfinger is kind of out of proportion. He's not a slim, in shape guy.
Hey, be careful.
I mean, you get some of
be
it.
careful what you're saying about in shape.
All right. What also struck me is that some of the things that we've grown accustomed to in the movies, we see glimpses of here. Brosnan, as Bond, had a signature move of straightening his tie after a rough go. Well, in the first few pages of Goldfinger, Bond, recalling his killing of the Mexican before coming to Miami Beach, is described as Bond picked up the body and laid it against a wall in deeper shadow. He brushed his hands down his clothes, felt to see if his tie was straight, and went on to his hotel. Yeah. How about that? I mean, that was Brosnan's signature move, and it's written here in Goldfinger. So, I mean, look at that. This influences Bond movies later on. Craig had his thing, straightening out the cuffs. Brosnan had the tie, and it's right here in Goldfinger.
And
That's
Jaws
nice.
had the dusting off after getting a little rough up.
And Bond does that too.
We also know that some of the actors who took on the role have said they looked at Fleming's writings to learn more about the character.
Yeah.
So it looks like in this case, either Brosnan did it on his own or somebody told him, hey, why don't you do this? And it's a tie back to the book.
But it's brilliant
cool.
that here it is. Right.
Yep.
There's even a reference to so many ways people are killing other people, including, quote, people using their motor cars to kill with. As we recall, Goldfinger lecturing Bond when they were talking at the Oryx Stud Ranch in the movie. Goldfinger was telling Americans kill, so many thousands of people a year with their cars and stuff. It's in the book here too, which is great. So you can see how the screenwriters absorbed many pieces from the original novel and used them in different ways in the movie.
Well, that's why the movies based on the books are better than the current
Fantastic.
movies. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
also a direct reference in the book to the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach,
Yes.
where in Florida, where Bond stayed. Now we've been there. It looks
Yep.
very different now than what it did back then, but it still is a posh and famous hotel, and it worked in both the novel and the movie.
Yep.
And there's a great description of the food and the ambience at the restaurant Mr. DuPont, who's the pigeon Goldfinger takes in cards in the book.
Yeah, he was Simmons in the movie. Right?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was. All right. So DuPont takes Bond to dinner at Bill's on the Beach.
Yes.
It was stone crab. And when the food arrived, the description was so authentic. A wide silver dish of crabs, big ones, their shells and claws broken, was placed in the middle of the table. Then a silver sauceboat brimming with melted butter and a long rack of toast was put beside each of their plates. I mean,
All
what a
right.
great way to describe this.
Yeah, and it is a great description, and he uses again very, very nice descriptive language. You can almost taste the crab. Well, Tom, you and I did taste the crab when we were in Miami Beach at
Oh,
this
yeah.
restaurant that Fleming probably ate at himself. It was not called Bill's on the Beach. It was called Joe's Stone Crab, and it was fantastic. It's been around since like 1913. And when we ate there, it was exactly as described by Fleming here in Goldfinger. Clearly, Bill's on the Beach is modeled after Joe's Stone Crab. No
Oh,
question.
absolutely. And I've been there a bunch of times. If you do a location trip down to Miami to see where the Bond stuff was filmed and from the stuff from the book, if you go to Joe's Stone Crab, you need to know that the main restaurant is only open from mid-October to mid or earlier mid-May, something like that. It really coincides with the stone crab catching season. So if they're allowed to catch stone crabs, the restaurant's open. Otherwise, it's just takeout. And I have made that mistake of going down there in the summer once. Brought my wife down there. I'm like, oh, we're going to go to this great restaurant. And it was
Yeah.
closed. So
Yeah. All right. So take
you've
that
been
hint.
warned, but it's a great restaurant.
It is highly recommended. All right. We always wondered how much Bond made as a yearly salary. You know, hey, you're risking your life every day for your government and for the world. Well, on the first page of chapter 3 in the Goldfinger novel, Bond is in his room and thinking, wow, this suite costs $200 a day. This was published in the UK on March 23rd, 1959. So Bond made a calculation. And it says in the book, if he were paying the bill, it would take him just 3 weeks to spend his whole salary for the year. Wow. So 200 times 21 days is $4,200 US dollars a year. Not horrible, but not fantastic because the average family income at that time was about $5,600 a year. So, wow. You're
Yeah.
doing all
So,
this for, ooh,
yeah. So spies aren't paid enough for what they do.
no.
And if you take that number and put it in today's terms, it'd be about $2,100 a night.
Yeah.
Now, we told you this is a posh place, and they have many rooms under $1,000 a night. But when you get into the suites, you can go up to $6,000 a night for a suite at the Fontainebleau right now in
Nice.
February. So
It's a nice
it's a,
place.
it is a very nice place.
We got to walk all over it because we told them we were from spymovienavigator.com and they let us film all over the place. It was great.
And we did
All
not
right.
get a $6,000 a night suite.
We did not get a $6,000 a night room. No. There's just so much from the book that influences at least the basic scenes and characters in the movie. The screenplay writing is remarkable.
I agree.
Yeah, let's look at a few individual instances that we want to talk about. So let's look at the opening sequence. In the book, I like how there is a connection between the DuPont character, who is Goldfinger's pigeon at cards, and his connection to Casino Royale. Yeah, DuPont and his wife Ethel were next to Bond at the Baccarat table when James Bond went head to head with Le Chiffre. So here, DuPont, who is getting cheated out of cash by Goldfinger at Canasta, has a connection to the first James Bond novel. And in the book, he asks Bond to observe Goldfinger for cheating. I mean, I love that. That's a great little connection in the book.
Yeah, it's great when you bring characters into other works by that author. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I remember him.
Yeah. And he recognizes Bond, of course, coincidentally, They're there at the same time. We see Bond reflect on his previous mission in Mexico, but we do not have a detailed scenario of that mission like we do in the movie, other than that a Mexican was definitely killed by Bond. But then you look at the movie, of course, we have what Raymond Benson and others think is the best pre-title sequence of any Bond movie. It is a spectacular pre-title, and we have an entire episode dedicated to that. And it's a great addition to the storyline. After that mission in Latin America, Bond is supposed to get some R&R in Miami when Leiter shows up to tell him that, hey, MI6 wants you to observe this guy Goldfinger. So in both instances, he's observing Goldfinger, but two different people are asking him to do that. From the novel, it's DuPont. In the book, it's M.
All right, so let's go to the next one that we want to point out too, and it's how Bond catches Goldfinger cheating. And he makes him, through intimidation and threats, repay DuPont. Kind of like in the movie, a little bit different. Yeah. Bond took pictures with the Leica camera of Jill and Goldfinger and the radio setup. And he threatened Goldfinger with turning it over to the FBI in Scotland Yard in the novel if Goldfinger didn't write out a check for $50,000 to DuPont.
Yeah.
$10,000 of which was to be Bond's fee.
Yeah, that was pretty nice.
Yeah, not bad, especially since he was doing government work, making $4,000 a year.
And we do have Jill in here, right?
Yeah, yeah. But... And this is actually a very well detailed scene in the book, and it's a must read. And the screenwriters for the movie took a lot from this chapter, which is called Over the Barrel.
Yeah. And fantastic.
Bond does have a little tryst with Jill Masterton. Notice I said Masterton.
Yeah, not Masterson. It is Masterson in the movie, Masterton in the novel. Oh, not a big difference, but there is a difference.
Enough to trip us up. And he's having this little tryst with her on the train on the way to New York. It's a spy novel. There's a train. There's a little, whatever in the train happening here. And it's really, there's a short paragraph or two about it, but a quotation comes to Bond's mind afterwards. Quote, "Some love is fire, some love is rust, but the finest, cleanest love is lust." End quote.
It kind of defines the whole Bond persona.
Exactly.
I love it. That's a great quote.
Cleanest love is lust. Get in, get out. Okay, I didn't mean that as that pun.
All right.
Now, Jill does die in the book, but it isn't detailed like what we see in the movie. It's just mentioned. But suffocating with paint didn't happen in the novel.
No.
And there's also talk about Goldfinger's golf game and that they have the same handicap. So all of this is in the way Fleming wrote this chapter. Yeah. Now in the movie, of course, we know Bond and Jill have some fun together. And Bond, after getting knocked out by Oddjob, walks into one of the most famous scenes in any Bond movie. Jill is dead, covered in gold paint. This is far more dramatic in the movie than in the book. And it's a scene that every Bond fan knows. So there's some great screenwriting here.
Yeah.
Taking their little tete-a-tete and expanding on it.
Yeah. And this scene, of course, there's a huge homage paid to it in Quantum of Solace with Strawberry Fields' demise covered in oil, of course. So, yeah, great. But I have to say, the screenwriters really enhanced this in the movie. Fantastic.
Oh, yes.
All right, let's look at a next one, investigating Goldfinger and his suspected smuggling operations, because this is what Bond needs to figure out. In the novel, M assigns Bond to do some investigating into Goldfinger's operations and to find out if Goldfinger has any connections to Smersh. Not Spectre, Smersh. In the movie, we get the whole scene with Bond back at headquarters and Q introducing Bond and us to the Aston Martin DB5 and other gadgets as well, like the homing device and so on. This scene is one element of the screenwriting that sets the bar high for future Bond movies and develops the blueprint for future Bond movies for sure. Bond is briefed in more detail about the suspicions they have of Goldfinger in the movie. So, again, great screenwriting.
Yeah, now, one of my favorite scenes is next that I want to talk about in both the novel and the movie. And that's the golf match between James Bond and Goldfinger.
Yeah, and you love golf.
I love golf. And they engage in this 18-hole golf match. There's a lot of detail provided by Fleming. In fact, this takes, depending on the format of what you're reading, 30 to 40 pages of the novel is this golf match.
Yeah.
And Goldfinger loses because Bond cheats.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons I love this scene so much is because how Fleming wrote Bond's caddy, Hawker, into the novel. And it carries forward into the movie. Even though this takes as many pages as it does, it keeps you interested. You can tell Fleming was a golfer. He had the same handicap as James Bond, both being a 9 handicap. Now, handicaps were calculated differently back then. In today's terms, they would probably be about a 12 handicap, right? But the fact that he's got the stuff with Hawker in there, since I caddied for a long time, that I really like the way he described that. Now, in the movie, they don't do the whole match. It's just a few of the holes.
Yeah, they're not doing 18 holes, no.
Yeah, they're not going to do all 18 in the movie. But we do know that Bond cheats. And on the
Yeah.
final hole, he switches out the Schlesinger 1 for the Schlesinger 7 he found. Now, Goldfinger had just cheated the hole before. Actually,
Yeah.
Oddjob did, saying, "Hey, I found your
for
lost
him.
ball."
Yeah.
Yeah. So Goldfinger doesn't like losing. And he warns Bond about others who have meddled in his affairs. I love that. It's just kind of like, don't mess with me.
Yeah.
And then Oddjob kindly demonstrates that he can slice the head off of a statue with his bowler hat. It's a formidable weapon, and it looks like nothing.
Yeah. And that hat does appear in the book. And of course, is another example of genius screenwriting because its use is enhanced in the movie. And every
Right.
Bond fan knows about this weapon. So Oddjob has a similar description in terms of appearance and being mute, stocky, very strong and powerful in the book and in the movie.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so let's get to where they're tracking Goldfinger in Europe and the Tilly Masterson interaction. In the novel, Bond uses a homing device on Goldfinger's rolls to track him through Europe. Bond does meet Tilly Masterton in the novel. And so, yeah, you're right. She's still Jill's sister who is seeking revenge for her sister's death. So both Bond and Tilly in the novel are captured together. And eventually Tilly, at the hand of, or hat, of Oddjob, is killed as Bond and Tilly were running. She was holding back, trying to get to Pussy Galore, and Oddjob threw his bowler hat and struck her at the nape of the neck. Boom, dead. So
That
we
was
see
it.
similar, right?
No,
We go to the
yep.
movie, and Bond tracks Goldfinger again with Q's homing device to Switzerland this time, only Switzerland, and he encounters Tilly after her failed attempt to shoot Goldfinger, and then meets her again as she tries to kill Goldfinger at his Auric Enterprises plant. So after a car chase to get Bond and Tilly, there is a brief shootout as Bond tells Tilly to run, and she's struck down dead by Oddjob's hat, and Bond is then captured, not both of them, leading to another memorable scene and dialogue in the movie, as we know.
Yeah, so we've seen in what we've just described, we've seen Oddjob throw his hat twice, and he's deadly with it.
Yeah.
It's a deadly little device. So before that scene happens where she gets hit by the hat, we've got James Bond bound to a table, and there's a circular saw threatening him. I mean, that's got to be a painful way to go, getting
That
sliced
hurt.
up by a circular saw. Now, at the last minute, Goldfinger decides to spare both Bond and Tilly, deciding they're useful alive, and coerces them into roles within his operation. And Bond seemed to be cooperative. Now, Goldfinger's not 100% convinced about Bond, so they're watched carefully. And Goldfinger's big ego gets the better of him, thinking he can control Bond, especially with Oddjob's help.
Yeah. Now, this was a stretch to me in the novel, as we've always said, just kill him for crying out loud.
Yeah,
I
just
get, you know,
kill him.
Wait, you think you're going to convert Bond into working for you and
No,
then
just
and
kill
go
him.
along with that and Tilly too? It's like this part of the novel, I thought, okay, all right. The movie is better on this one. I think.
Yeah, they stretch it out a bit here. Now,
Yeah.
still in the novel, Bond and Tilly are drugged, and before Bond wakes up on a plane, because remember he wakes up on a plane in the
Yeah.
movie, he somehow dreams that he is in heaven, or something that feels like heaven. And then he wakes up and he realizes he's still captured.
Yeah, right. So again, we get the similar thing, right? In the movie, Bond is strapped to a table and he faces a menacing laser instead of the saw, which was a newer device at the time the movie was made. And again, good screenwriting here to incorporate this laser instead of the saw. Bond saves himself when he talks Operation Grand Slam to Goldfinger. Then he was drugged with the tranquilizer dart. As we know, he wakes up on the plane. But instead of the concept of dreaming of heaven, he wakes up and sees Pussy Galore, asks her name, and she says, Pussy Galore. And he says, I must be dreaming. Okay. Again, great writing.
Yes. Yeah, and I do like the fact that they brought in, I mean, nobody had ever seen a laser in a movie before. They had just come out.
Yeah.
So it was really cool how they took new technology and showed it to the world.
Yeah. Now, let's look at Operation Grand Slam and the whole Fort Knox plot. It's different in the movie and the book, of course. In the novel, Goldfinger plans to physically steal the gold from Fort Knox with multiple American gangsters. Goldfinger planned to dope the water supply in the whole Fort Knox area and later revealed that the doping narcotic was actually GB, one of the most potent nerve gases in the world that would kill, not disable, everyone, maybe up to 60,000 people.
Yeah, now GB is one of those things that most people probably would know it as sarin,
Yeah.
which is really deadly stuff. You probably wouldn't have heard it called GB, but sarin's the more common name for it.
Yeah. In the novel, again, they think that this GB, sarin, would be fast with widespread death, leaving Fort Knox completely unguarded and ready to be breached. Goldfinger explains how they will remove the gold from Fort Knox. And, well, this is somewhat very unrealistic. As
The
moving that
maths
much
don't work on that very well.
yeah, I mean, moving that much gold, as Bond points out to Goldfinger in the movie, would take a tremendous amount of resources and time. Goldfinger says a Soviet ship would be standing by near Norfolk, Virginia, and after they loaded the trucks and loaded the train, they would head there. What? Okay, all right. That was really not a great plan. Now, maybe, just maybe, Smersha's involved here, but we're not sure. They don't say for sure in the novel, but it sounds like they
Well,
were.
especially since it's a Russian
Soviet
ship.
ship. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other part of that is, given the weight of all that gold, they're going to move this on train. That's got to be a big train to hold that much weight.
Yeah.
And the train ride today, if you did it by train, it's about 700 miles. And if you drove it on the roads, it'd be over 1,000 miles to get from Fort Knox to Norfolk.
Yeah.
So it would be a long time to move something like that, and making it, you're exposed when you're on a train, making it easier to be caught. If anybody catches a whiff that, oh yeah, this gold ended up on this train, you're on a trek. You're not going, you're not deviating.
You kind of know where the train is.
So kind of an interesting choice for me in that one.
In the chapter Hood's Congress, some of the gangster organizations are actually called out in the novel. Helmut Springer, he's the Purple Gang from Detroit. Billy the Grinner Ring, the Machine from Chicago. Jack Strapp, the Spangled Mob from Las Vegas. We remember the Spangled Mob and Diamonds Are Forever. Mr. Solo, the Unione Siciliano from Italy. And Pussy Galore, the Cement Mixers, Harlem, New York City. So that's pretty cool that they call them all out there. In the movie,
Yeah, it is, because in the novel you get a little bit, you know who these people are a little bit, even just by their names.
Yeah.
And in the movie, we talked about it's different. Here, Goldfinger plans to irradiate Fort Knox's gold using a Chinese-supplied atomic dirty bomb. So he says it's going to make the gold unusable for 58 years, to be exact.
Yeah.
Now, this is more realistic from a concept than trying to move all the gold out.
Yes.
But the gold, in reality, would not have been irradiated for that long at all.
No.
But Goldfinger invites the mob bosses in the movie, and then he kills them with nerve gas after explaining to them what the plan is. Well,
Yeah.
at least he has $1 million from each of them in gold.
Yeah. So you got that.
And then Pussy Galore betrays Goldfinger here, as Bond later quips, perhaps Bond appealed to her maternal instinct.
Yeah. Yeah. The movie concept was better for sure. But again, it wouldn't have been irradiated. I think they say that it might have been irradiated for maybe a year or less or something. So it wouldn't have been anyway near that. Now let's look at Pussy Galore's role in both the novel and the movie.
Yeah, so now We just said that Bond says that he appealed to Pussy's maternal instinct. Well, in the novel, Pussy Galore leads an American gang of sorts, a gang of lesbian criminals called the Cement Mixers. Now,
Mhm.
they used to be acrobats. Pussy is a trained pilot, and she trained her girls as the flying circus
Yep.
so they could escape by air wherever they needed to and whenever they needed to. And she's openly lesbian in the book, which I think is where this maternal instinct quip came from
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
the movie.
Yeah.
Now she appears only in about the last third of the book, but she still has an important and pivotal role, and she stays loyal to Goldfinger until late in the novel.
Yeah.
Now, in the movie, Pussy's reimagined as the leader of a female aerial stunt team called the Flying Circus, and Bond forces himself upon her in the barn, and somehow he convinces her to support him in sabotaging Goldfinger's plan. At least that's what he hopes. Because
Yeah.
he doesn't really know until the end if she's on his side or not.
Yeah. I mean, she had a very large role in the movie and Honor Blackman, of course. Wow. Wow. She was fantastic. Yeah. Now, let's look at Fort Knox, the climax and the showdown. In the novel, Bond and Tilly act as aides to Goldfinger, which, again, I think pretty weird. The robbery plan is underway, but the CIA and MI6 intervention interrupts the plot. Tilly is killed, as we mentioned, by Oddjob. Bond escapes, and the bomb plot never materializes. The atomic warhead in the novel was going to be used to blow their way into Fort Knox, and it was supposedly low radiation. Okay, they figured that one out. Goldfinger and Pussy.
I would not want to be in that area to find out.
No. And Goldfinger and Pussy escape too, for the moment, at least. Now, in the movie, of course, Bond is brought to Fort Knox as a captive, handcuffed to the dirty bomb rolling case, escapes, fights Oddjob, and he electrocutes Oddjob. And with only seconds left before the bomb explodes, Bond still can't figure out how to defuse it. An American FBI CIA man saves the day by clicking off a switch, disarming the weapon. So Bond's success is questionable here. He arrived as a captive. He managed to free himself. He did defeat Oddjob, but did he save the day? Not really, no. The SWAT team that came in from the CIA, FBI, American Army, whatever, they saved the day.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have known about the plot if Bond hadn't done the note and the homing device.
That's true. He did do his spy stuff.
He got the information to Felix so that action could be taken.
Yeah.
And he always needs help in everything he does. Every mission he's got help from somewhere.
Yeah,
Here, he kind of said, hey, here, something's going on. This is what's going to happen. And the CIA comes in and helps close out the deal.
But a good spy does that, right? He gets help.
Yep.
He or she gets help from whoever they need help from. So that's good to get the mission done. All right. Now, it's not over, though. There's a final escape.
It's a Bond movie or a Bond novel. It never ends right when you think it does.
Yeah. And there is a final escape or death. In the novel, Bond ends up on Goldfinger's jet after the attempted robbery. And, Tom, even Goldfinger agrees with us because Bond has been so disruptive to Goldfinger's plans. When Goldfinger emerges from the cockpit aboard the plane, Goldfinger says, quote, "You certainly turned out to be a snake in my pastures. Why I kept you alive? Why didn't I crush you like a beetle?" Unquote. Yup. Just kill Bond, like we've said so often.
Just kill him. Just shoot him. You had ample opportunity to get rid of this guy who ends up totally killing your plan.
Yeah, Goldfinger agrees with us. That's nice. Thank you, Goldfinger. All right. Now, aboard, it's Oddjob who gets sucked out of the window in the novel, not Goldfinger, as in the movie. In a well-written scene in the novel describing the challenge in subduing Goldfinger in a fisticuffs fight, in the chapter called TLC Treatment, Goldfinger does die, but by strangulation. Pussy had passed a note to Bond that she was on his side on the plane.
Would you have believed that note?
Oh, yeah. Hey, would you believe the note? Why not at the time?
You get in the situation you're in, you get this. Oh, I'm with you now.
Yeah, good. Anyway, they crash land in the water, but they are rescued, and Pussy then makes romantic moves on Bond. And here's Bond's line. Quote, they told me you only liked women. Okay. To which Pussy replies, I never met a man before. Whoa, okay. There's the novel. We know it's a little different in the movie, but that's pretty good. Great writing by Fleming there.
Does that feed into the On Her Majesty's Secret Service? I don't like women in that way.
Yeah, I don't
That
know.
Bond says.
Yeah, right. When he's Hillary
Yeah,
Bray. Yeah,
yeah.
okay. All right.
All right, now in the movie, Bond gets invited to the White House because the president wants to thank him for his part in stopping the Fort Knox attack. Notice
Yeah.
he wasn't thanking Leiter, who was leading the operation from
Yeah,
the
right.
U.S.
Yeah.
government's perspective. But this plane gets hijacked by Goldfinger and his goons.
Mhm.
Bond wrestles with Goldfinger and Goldfinger's gun, and the shots are fired through a window. The plane decompresses, and Goldfinger is sucked out the window. And then Bond and Pussy parachute to safety in the movie.
Yeah. The brilliance here is that the screenwriters were very clever in selecting the characters and scenes from the Goldfinger novel that they would use in the movie. That is good writing, and they did it throughout. The entire movie is solid.
Yeah. And I think they edited scenes, they made changes to the scenes, and overall, at least I think, they made a better story in the movie than in the novel.
Yeah.
And this is why the early Bond movies were so good. They took Fleming's material, they updated it, and they improved it for the screen by getting Richard Maybaum and Paul
Yeah. What a
Dane
great
helping to
writers.
write this stuff. So very well done.
They may have been better than Purvis and Wade, Tom.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice to have some good writing behind this.
Now, there are many other cool elements in the novel Goldfinger that we will come to know and love in other Bond movies. This is why the writers were so good. We know, for example, how Milton Crest from License to Kill was taken from the Hildebrand Rarity. That short story. Well, in Goldfinger, when Bond wants to do some research on Goldfinger, well, he goes to see the records duty officer who uses the Identicast, which is, quote, a machine for building up an approximate picture of a suspect, unquote.
Hey,
Oh,
wait, I've heard that
yeah.
before. We've
Oh,
seen that
yeah.
before.
The Identigraph from For Your Eyes Only. So you gotta love this stuff. This is great.
Yeah, that's very cool. I mean, to be able to see that then used in For Your Eyes Only is really nice. Now, of course, the villain Goldfinger sets the bar for some future villains with big plans. Think of Stromberg in The Spy Who Loved Me, or
Yeah.
Hugo Drax in Moonraker,
Yeah.
or Carver in Tomorrow Never Dies.
Yeah.
It's very similar, reused type of character that we see. And the blueprint is a gold print from Goldfinger.
Yeah. And of course, the villain's lair. You're talking about the villains. The villain's lair, Ken Adam, designing Goldfinger's lair, set a very high bar for future villain lairs. Dr. Nose was pretty good, of course, but the future lairs like Stromberg's in The Spy Who Loved Me, the space station in Moonraker, like we're talking about, the volcano lair in You Only Live
Oh,
Twice.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Goldfinger was the first James Bond movie by Eon Productions to feature a pre-credits sequence unrelated to the main plot. And it kind of relates because there's a mission that it's referred to, but it's not really. And it
Yeah, yeah.
establishes a pattern for many future James Bond movies.
Yeah, now this is only the third movie that Eon Productions did. Dr. No didn't have a pre-title sequence. From Russia with Love did for the first time, but it was tied to the mission. And this, like you said, is the first time it's not tied to the actual mission. So kudos to the screenwriters who were tremendous in those days for the Bond movies. Richard Maybaum and Paul Dehn. Wow. Maybaum in particular is just such a talent.
He really was. He was a fantastic writer and researcher. Right. So we have an episode out on my visit to University of Iowa where they have the Maybaum collection there, a collection of his story treatments, which are before the script. Right. So here we're telling the story. Here's what the story of the movie is going to be. And then
Yeah.
they turn that into a script. What I found even more fascinating were his research notes, because he did a lot of research trying to keep things current. So before they did A View to a Kill, he did all this research on blimps. That goes into the movie. So it's really cool to tie that together. So if you ever have a couple days, You have to make a reservation, but you can go to the University of Iowa and take a look at the Maybaum collection. It's fascinating to read how he worked through all of his scripts for the Bond movies.
Yeah, and you're looking at his original notes and stuff too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, when you see the original documents, like Tom and I went to Indiana University where they own 10 of Ian Fleming's original manuscripts, typewritten pages, scratch outs, and everything else that he wrote in Jamaica. We went through all of those ones. When you see the original stuff in person, like the Maybaum stuff at the University of Iowa and the Fleming at Indiana University, it's just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, and we'll leave links to both episodes. We did an episode also on the Indiana University trip to see Fleming's manuscripts. So I'll leave a link to both that trip and this trip I took to the University of Iowa to kind of learn what's there. And if you ever are in the Midwest of the U.S. and you got a little bit of time on your hands, definitely worth do it. If you're a Bond fan, just make sure in both cases make a reservation. You go online and it's pretty easy to find out how to do that.
Yeah. All right. The final chapter has closed. The final scene unveiled in our dive into the Goldfinger story. This has been Dan
and Tom
of SpyMovieNavigator.com on our show, Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. If you like this episode, subscribe to our show right now. You help us out a lot when you do that and allow us to even do more. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it.